Hello, my name is Harrison Ockery, and this is my presentation for the class Teaching Scientific Argumentation and Critical Thinking. So this will be a presentation presented over a couple of days to my Science PLC. My Science PLC has about 10 members in it, and in our PLC times we have about 30 minutes at a time, and throughout the year, we are required to present something, do some tuning protocols and different things. And this will be my kind of focus for the first semester for the roughly 5 times that I'll be presenting. And so what I've done is I've kind of broken it up into, similar to the way the class was put together, as kind of 5 different pieces to be discussed over the next 5 PLC times for my science department. So this is the presentation that goes along with it. Part 1, the many applications of critical thinking, will mirror a lot of things in Module 1, and that'll be day 1. So we have about 30 minutes, and I can get through a lot of the information in about 30 minutes, but not as in-depth as it takes to get through Module 1. So I'll be kind of paraphrasing and summarizing a lot of the information for them. Part 2 is the importance of argumentation in science. Part 3 is developing scientific argumentation skills. Part 4 is case studies, critical thinking, argumentation. And Part 5 is implementing and assessing case studies. So all 5 of these parts, one each day. So getting into Part 1, the many applications of critical thinking. Some of the key things I want them to know after this very first day is done is the key features of case studies that will inspire student interest and motivation to learn science, and how we can use case studies as a way to improve students' critical thinking and higher order thinking skills. So I'm going to start it off with going through the Daniel Cheris principles of critical thinking, going through those 11 basic steps of how to become a critical thinker, making sure that you gather complete information, understand and define all terms, question the methods by which facts are derived, question the conclusions, look for hidden assumptions and biases, question the source of facts, don't expect all the answers, examine the big picture, example multiple cause and effect, watch for thought stoppers, and understand your own biases and values. So the plan for this will be have it printed off and give it to the students before we get into case studies. So if they do need to take a look at it, we can discuss it, but we'll just be talking about these 11 pieces. So I'll have this printed off for them. In addition with that, even getting a little bit further into it is understanding exactly what is a case study. So what I'll do is the 7 different definitions from Press Academia, from the website that is linked right here. I will just ask my colleagues which of those best outlines their current understanding of a case study. And then we're just going to have a little discussion about that. So it's really about just getting them to understand what is a case study, how can we use them, and how can that tie into what we previously just talked about with critical thinking. And then I'm going to give them the website to these 3 fine resources just to take a look at some case studies. So that's the first day. Moving on to the second day, talking about the importance of argumentation in science. Objectives for this is going to be to find scientific argumentation and why it is both a useful skill for students to learn and a mode for educators to use to facilitate learning of science content, and assess the benefits of teaching critical thinking and argumentation in the context of science. So we're going to go through that handout, argumentation and the science and engineering practices. This has been actually a big piece of our component, as a few of the teachers are moving to standards-based grading, and we're using the science and engineering practices as kind of our standards or our basics, things that are transferable through multiple classrooms. We'll talk about how argumentation fits into our classrooms currently right now. Some of the teachers are using argumentation from ADI, some are not. So we'll talk about that information. And that kind of goes in with the ADI books that we're currently using for argumentation. And then when we're finished talking about that, we're going to read quickly through the handout below, and just basically how do we get the NGSS involved with through ADI. Our state has not adopted the NGSS, and I don't think, and it will not be adopting the NGSS, but it's going to be very similar to the NGSS. Why do we teach argumentation? So we're going to look at the two articles below. So argument across the content areas and a culture of argumentation. We're comparing and contrasting them and just kind of discussing those. This one, if we don't get to it, is not as is okay if we don't get to this part, because that first part might take a very long time. But I do want to ask two questions based on it. What resonates with them, and should we work towards teaching argumentation in the classroom, or do we expect that the students should be able to get that through their English classes, because they do also do this. So this has kind of actually been a point of contention about who's teaching what and so forth in the different classes. Moving on to day 3, we're going to get a little bit into the claim evidence reasoning framework. So objectives for day 3 are develop questioning techniques that help students develop a deep understanding of core ideas in science. And that can be along with the NGSS standards. Again, we are not adopting them, but it's going to be pretty close. Create a plan for using explanatory questions to initiate discussions and debates that engage students in learning science through argumentation. So we'll be looking at argumentation in the high school classroom, underutilized and misunderstood, and we'll also be taking a look at the claim evidence reasoning and argumentation framework that is also seen below. Now, we have been having some discussions about this framework of it being claim evidence reasoning or rationale that's in this one. We've been thinking about switching that up into evidence claim rationale, and the main reason why is we've had an issue with some students. Actually, quite a few students having the misconception that when it goes claim evidence reasoning, because they are pretty concrete sequential, they will make a claim and then they provide the evidence instead of gathering the evidence and making the claim based off that. So we're discussing switching those things around. So I expect to have a deeper discussion about that through this. But a lot of our teachers are pretty comfortable with this. And actually, this has spilled over into our social studies classes and some of our English classes, being able to do claim evidence reasoning. Some of the different strategies. So looking at the article, Learning Scientific Argument and Principle and Practice, kind of just seeing how a written argument would come about, because part of the ADI format involves actually creating a written argument. So looking at the opening argument, claim 1, claim 2, and then you refute a counterclaim, and then you have a conclusion. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll take a look at this article, and then we're going to read the handout, Social Media and Scientific Argumentation. And this is because cell phones and social media in the classroom are becoming a really big topic at our schools. So that is going to be a huge discussion that actually might take a whole nother class period about should we start using social media as a way to argue scientifically, because students are seeing all of this stuff on social media about any type of scientific topic, and a lot of the times there's no evidence for that. So how can we teach them to use social media correctly and make sure they show that they're scientifically literate through it? Day 4 or day 5, depending upon how long that previous one goes, case studies, critical thinking, and argumentation. Looking at case studies in science. So we're going to develop ways to engage students in making and supporting claims using the observations and measurements they obtain from scientific investigations, and discuss a list of best practices for effectively teaching critical thinking skills using case studies. So we're going to watch these 2 videos, and then we're going to talk about the 2 questions. What resonates with you during the videos, and does this help you understand the possible uses of case studies? And each of these 2 videos kind of goes through how you can use videos as a case study. So the Grinch one was a psychology one, and the Everyone Knows Girls Are Bad at Math was from the Buffalo Case Studies website. The next part is how do we use case studies in the classroom? So a couple different resources that are excellent showing how can we actually use them in the classroom. The one from Buffalo Case Studies goes through all the different types of case studies that are out there. So then just talking through this so that the teachers are a little more comfortable using these. And then using the 3 websites, find a case study, and we'll discuss how it could be used in your classroom. If they're already using a case study, explain how that's used. Day 5, looking at the Boy Scouts said it best. So main points of that one, the 5 main solutions from Boy Scouts. And then from the Illinois Center for Innovation, these 6 questions that we can ask about case studies to get a little deeper, higher order thinking skills. And then the last part, how do we evaluate? So looking at rubrics and so forth. And to wrap it up before I run out of time, these are my 3 outside references, and these are the rest of my references.